My guest on this episode is Ronnie, also known as the dancing therapist. Ronnie is an integrative therapist in training with a deep passion for somatic healing. That is the idea that our bodies hold the key to emotional freedom as much as our minds. Ronnie came to this work through her own journey, from a lifelong love of dance music and a profound experience on a retreat to becoming 8.5 years sober. In this conversation, we explore why the opposite of depression might be expression, what it really means to drop out of your head and into your body, and how something as simple as shaking or placing your hand over your heart can actually shift your entire nervous system. We also talk about something called collective effervescence, that euphoric feeling of dancing together in a crowd, and why that experience is so much more for human beings than just a good night out. Whether you're someone who hasn't danced since you were a teenager, you're navigating sobriety, or you are simply someone who spends way too much time in their own head, this episode is for you.
Balanced well-being begins with sleep, and our award-winning Doze and Dream formula was created with this in mind. This blend of adaptogens and herbs promotes a well-rested body and mind. I have combined reishi and ashwagandha with chamomile, passion flower, nutmeg, and sea greens. These herbs work synergistically to help you drift off and wake up feeling refreshed. Consistency is key when it comes to adaptogens, so make Doze and Dream part of your evening ritual to nurture good sleep habits and support restorative sleep.
So,
Right.
Ronnie, welcome.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be here. Very excited to have a chat with you.
First of all, why don't you just introduce who you are, what you do, so that people can get more of a sense of what we're going to talk about?
Yes. My name's Ronnie, also known as the dancing therapist. I am just about to qualify as an integrative therapist, and I also work in the music space.
Okay, so has there been like a moment for you when you kind of personally experienced movement doing something that words couldn't?
Yes, it all started for me. Where are we now? 9 years ago, I was seeing an amazing therapist. In fact, one of the first things she said to me, and I just remember looking at her, was after about our second session, she said to me, "You need to go to Five Rhythms." I was like, what on earth is Five Rhythms? So kind of looked it up and went, not for me. I was kind of a little bit, a bit resistant to anything at that point. But after about a year of working with her, she suggested I do a retreat called Path of Love. And again, I was like, but there was something in me that was like, do the retreat, go on the retreat. And then when we got to the retreat, which is it's like a deep healing trauma, it's amazing, but it's so rooted in dance. So there would be the sort of therapeutic talking piece, but then we would just go into this kind of dance-based thing where we would literally dance through everything and process everything through. And the first day I remember just sort of sitting there going, "Oh my goodness," do you know what I mean? And it was a sight to behold. I mean, people were screaming and punching and dancing and wailing, and it was just wild. But after I sort of got on my initial, I kind of let myself kind of get into it, and it was unbelievable. I found pain and I found emotions that I couldn't access with my mind, or that were sort of trapped almost. And I mean, it was amazing. Now I work on this retreat. You can go back and stuff, but you look at people who arrive on day one and everyone is kind of, afraid, and you've got to give your phone in because it's a week without phones. And by the last day, everybody is just, their whole postures have changed. Their eyes are open. Everything, you can just see the tension has just fallen away. So that was really where it changed for me. And coming from sort of a rave background, coming from someone who's been raving since she was 14 and is part of, been part of that scene for a long, long time, it was just like, oh my God, it's like everything that I sort of did that I thought I was going to have to give up is actually now a fundamental part of how I can heal and move through life.
It's wild, that, isn't it? Like, as someone who was also very much into kind of drum and bass and raving when I was young, and feeling like it was bad or it was outside of things, and now it seems to be this real path forward in a very different way. So maybe we were onto something the first time round.
You know what? We really were. And it's funny when you look back at how it was so demonized and how, the government was panicking and the ridiculous laws they brought in. And really, it was just, people coming together. And I think it's programmed in our DNA. While when we were living on the land, when we, pre-houses and, at the end of the day, when we'd been chased by, dinosaurs or tigers or whatever. And, we would get round fires and we would dance and we would move. It's something that I think we've forgotten, but I think it is something that's fundamentally in us. And so, yeah, it's kind of coming back to that. There's also this other amazing thing called, which my lovely friend mentioned to me one day, and it's called collective effervescence. And it's that feeling when everybody's, everyone's dancing together, and everybody's heartbeats start to sync up, and you just get this feeling, this kind of like, this collective healing, this feeling that you're all together. And yeah, it's just there's something more to it than just we thought we were all being naughty and dancing. Is something deeply healing and deeply necessary for our survival, I think.
I think it was often it was one of the only places I felt safe, as in kind of a sense of emotional safety and just being connected and kind of being in my body, really expressing myself as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
I know you put a post on Instagram maybe yesterday, which picking up on something I've seen doing the rounds, which is like the opposite of depression is expression. And
I
that's
mean,
like a
yeah, when I read that, it was just such a light bulb moment of just like, of course, and it's something now I use with my clients, that feeling that the opposite of depression isn't happiness or joy, it's expression, which makes sense because obviously, a lot of the time in life, it's not safe or it's not appropriate, or we don't feel like we were too young, stuff was happening, we didn't have the words, we didn't have a voice. So everything gets kind of depressed, and you can see it in people's bodies, and that depression just ends up sort of putting us into sort of a freeze state almost. And that's what I was saying, on that retreat, when you see at the end of the day, you can just see that so much has been expressed, and people kind of get permission again to be angry and to be rageful or to be joyous, whatever it is, but just get back into that for some reason. And I think it comes from that sort of societal, children should be seen and not heard, and big boys don't cry, and all this sort of, and also in England, that very stiff, we don't show emotions, etc. But yeah, no, it's terrible, terrible state of affairs.
it is. Sometimes I just don't know how we've got here, kind of a 9 to 5 job. Don't show your feelings, don't be embarrassing. Because there is something quite vulnerable, extremely vulnerable in dancing in public, especially. How do you do it?
I mean, it's funny because I've had so many funny experiences when I get caught. I had the loveliest experience the other day on the beach. I was dancing on the beach, and this little boy, it must have been about 11 or 12, went past on his bike, and he's like, "Oi, is that for TikTok?" And I was like, "No, I'm too old for TikTok. It's for Instagram." And I was like, "I'm the dancing therapist." He went, "I know."
Oh,
Just so sweet, and he just kind of like waved. And I think it was such a big thing for me because I really felt, I think, because I'm 8.5 years sober, and I think one of the things that took me so long to really go down that path was this thought that I'd never be able to dance again. And I've always loved dancing. It's been sort of part of my DNA since I was very young. My mum used to get so cross with me because she'd be trying to walk down the road and I'd be sort of skipping at the end of her arm. She'd be like, "Will you just walk?" So there was this part of me thinking, if I stop drinking and I'm going to have to give all that up, it's just going to be. And then obviously I went on that retreat, and it was after the retreat that I gave up drinking because I was like, actually, hold on a minute, dance could be just it's fundamentally who I am. So now, I don't know, I think about how it just makes people smile. Like you never, if you can't get, I dance all over the beach, people walk past, and I think they're more embarrassed than I am that they've sort of got like, "Oh, sorry," and so it. I think just from that retreat really broke something open in me because it's so healing, and if I can make somebody smile, or if I can make somebody stay. I mean, I'm very lucky. I do live in Margate. I get up very early, walk my dog sort of 6, 7. So there's very rarely that many people on the beach. But yeah, I think you just have to kind of, I think about my happiness and my health more than being embarrassed these days.
Yeah, that's very wise advice. So, what does a dancing therapist actually do when we
Well, it's
because
quite funny because I was I was thinking about, my sort of, because I'm about to qualify, I was thinking, about my brand and what I do. And then I just was like, oh, the dancing therapist came to me when I woke up one morning going, oh my God, I'm the dancing therapist. And then I was thinking, does that mean people think they're going to come in and I'm just going to start dancing with them? So I am currently training to be a traditional therapist, but I work even now very somatically. I'm very interested in when someone's telling, feeling it where I'm feeling it in my body, which I can kind of reflect back to them. But my journey will be that eventually I will train. There is actually a therapeutic dance training that I'm starting next year. So it's almost like the name came and then I was like, oh yeah, actually. But it's something like my own therapist did. I think it's such a fundamental part of how we heal is we can think and think and, but it's about getting out of here, dropping into our bodies and finding, often the body is healed before we realize that we're healed, if you know what I mean. And the body will all, if you ever drop out of your head and into your body, you can just always find something. It's like, oh, um, so I use it already very somatically in terms of just getting people to get into their bodies. Now I realize why my therapist sent me to 5 rhythms. It's just getting out, just feeling in. The body is always sending up signals, about what's going on. And sometimes if we don't listen, they get sort of louder and louder and more serious. But I always feel that anything that's going on that's wrong with us it's telling us something that perhaps needs releasing or needs healing.
yeah, I think that's so true. I think a lot of people seem to think that the mind is kind of the source of logic and wisdom and control, and that's where you should look for all the answers. And actually, like in your analytical mind, you've got your inner critic, you've got perfectionism, you've got shame. It's like, don't go there.
Don't go there. And
Actually, like,
we've got it the wrong way round. It's almost the heart is the master and the mind should be the servant. Like it has an important role to play. But it shouldn't be sort of making decisions. If we really want to know what's going on or really work out whether we should do something or not, the heart, the gut will give us the answers. And then we can call on the old mind to come in and kind of help out. But yeah, I think we've got it the wrong way around. We're kind of constantly up here all the time. And it's only going to really lead us into trouble because ultimately the ego is trying to keep us safe, but often to our own detriment and our own development and our own, being able to move forward in life.
so obviously, self-consciousness is going to come up as an obstacle for a lot of people. But also, I think if you are self-conscious, you're almost likely to benefit more, right?
That's
Um,
absolutely probably the more self-conscious you are, the more you need to dance or you need to move. Maybe, maybe you could position it as movement. It's like what they say about people who say they're too busy to meditate. They need to meditate for even longer than everybody else. Um, but I mean, you don't have to be like me and out in sort of dancing around on the on the beach and in public. You can find some space on your own. Just put on some angry, it's nice to have a little bit of a mixed up playlist, like some angry songs and some sad songs and some really happy songs, and just feel how they land in your body. Sometimes, just feel, because it can really be, how music could be such a catalyst for releasing something. Really, really can.
so what kind of, if you were to invite someone quite self-conscious to move, what would happen in their body? What would they be likely to experience?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, it's dropping into the body, which so many people have never done. I have a client at the moment, and we were in a session once, and I just asked him to, I said, but just close his eyes for a second and drop into his heart, and literally he dropped into his heart, and just this sigh came, and he hadn't been able to cry for months and months. The tears just came as soon as he tuned his heart. It was just almost like this, oh, finally, finally. So, I always start very gently, especially as you say, the very self-conscious people who haven't been there before. You have to make sure you're not going to really re-traumatize someone or push someone too far out of their comfort zone. So I always take it very, very slowly and just start off by, just tuning in to where, if they're talking about something, just perhaps feeling it, getting out of here into the heart, into the gut, and then just feeling into the legs and into just tuning into where it might be. Sometimes it's funny, people are like, God, it's in my legs. if they feel really heavy, and it can be a sign of sort of stuckness, or but just tuning in and just teaching them, trying to find little spaces throughout the day, just finding 5 minutes to check in with, what's going on. And then, introducing the idea of music, and, possibly, finding out what their sort of favorite music is, and think about, doing some movement. And I mean, I haven't ever had anyone come back and go, oh, but that was rubbish. Everyone comes back and goes, oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
It's
So
wild,
yeah.
isn't it? Like, so I do workshops, and nervous system and somatic is very much part of the resilience coaching that I do, because I just don't think you can have it without it. And in the workshops, a couple of years ago, I started getting people to dance. So I was going into these corporate environments, suits, very serious. They wanted to talk about the way your brain works and all this kind of thing. And I would get them up and put on a ridiculous song and just make everybody move. And by the end of it, even if it was only 30 seconds, everyone was smiling. Everyone was smiling. They're all, and it's just, I think what you're doing, like combining this, is incredible because it works.
It does. It so works. It so works. And, I just feel so blessed that I found this retreat, which is, because I was like, oh my goodness. The power of the combination of the two, and how emotive it is. And it just gives us permission to express stuff that we can't, maybe don't feel safe enough expressing, or don't have the words for, or yeah, you know what I mean. And there's that thing, from dance floors, when you're just into something and you're talking to someone through, without words, through the eyes and through the body, and it's just this connection that goes beyond this little mind, and goes so much deeper, so much deeper.
What was it you called it? Collective effervescence.
Collective effervescence. Yes. It's such a beautiful, beautiful little phrase as well. But yes, and it's that feeling, sometimes you're on a dance floor and, everybody's just euphoric. It's just that feeling of all, being together. And I think it really underpins the idea of how we need community, how we need to be together. We wouldn't have survived, on the land before if we weren't in our community. And I think it's a real reminder of that piece as well, how we need to be together, and how it can really bring us all together as one. And past all, whatever, people of all shapes, sizes, creeds, religions, etc. It's like that universal language.
Music is really unifying.
Really is. It
Yeah,
really
I
is.
think community is something everyone's talking about at the moment, but I think it also seems quite hard to create. There seems to be lots of barriers. I saw this thing that said everyone wants to benefit from the village, but no one wants to actually be the contributing part of the village. Do you know what I mean?
We want all the benefits without any of the hard
Yeah.
work. Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose, especially, it's funny, over the last 6 years, I suppose, since COVID, since the internet, has had such a profound effect on the way that we communicate and the way that we interact with each other. I mean, just take like dating, for example. I mean, that's a whole different ball game. You go out now, because most, if you go out and you're single, and you go into a bar or into a club, you're gonna know that if anyone's single there, they're going to be online, they're going to be talking to 5 or 6 other people. It's Whereas when we were out before, we had to connect. That was the way that we, but it's all very sort of, I don't know, flat now. It's very two-dimensional. It's just, yeah, it's strange.
Do you still go out? Do you still go raving?
I do. I do. I love it. I do. And I actually have a much better time now than I think I did before. And, now, if it's a good night and it's a great, I know that it is a really good night. Whereas I think a lot of times before, alcohol sort of convinced me it would turn a kind of an okay night into a great night because I was drinking. Whereas now, if it's a good night, it's a really good night, because if I'm really getting into it, everyone's, that there's that energy that I know it's really real. Whereas I think a lot of times I've turned into merry mediocre nights into kind of good nights, just because I was drinking. But I do. I'm a little bit more selective, perhaps, and also sometimes, sadly, if I'm tired, I'm just tired, and there, I don't have anything to sort of give me that pickup. But yeah, I love it. I think, we don't stop dancing because we get old. We get old because we stop dancing. I love the fact that when I started raving when I was 14, a very long time ago, all the DJs and all the people I've raved at, they're still, for the most part, dancing and, the festivals. We were talking about Mucky Weekender. There's DJs on that lineup that have been DJing since I started. So,
Yeah, so Goldie was a grown up when I first saw him, and I was not a grown up, and he is DJing at the Mucky Weekender.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah,
You
it's
have to come. You have to come. Come and dance.
yeah. I think a lot of I certainly went through a phase of thinking that, like you said at the start, that phase of my life is over. I have to be an adult now. And if anyone else is listening to this, please ignore that voice, because there is so much, like it's not about going out and being a party animal anymore, is it? It's about the actual music and the dancing. So
Yeah. And the people, and the people, getting out from behind these screens. I know we're on the screen now, but getting out behind screens and making real life connections and, feeling that lovely energy that comes when you've got people dancing together.
So, how would you suggest someone who has social anxiety, for example, approaches getting back into an environment where they can dance again?
Well, this is one of the reasons I set up a thing called the Sober Social. I was a couple of years sober. I did the AA route for a bit, realized it wasn't quite for me eventually, got a lot of respect for that as a program. But I was like, I don't really want to be talking about this day in, day out. And I want to live my life. I want to look at how I live my life now on this side of the fence. And something that I realized is, I'm fortunate enough to be quite confident. I've got lots of lovely friends who I go out with, but I kept meeting people who had literally lost entire friendship groups, particularly men. I found less than women, but they had lost total friendship groups because their social glue had been drinking. The thing that kind of brought them all together, that bonded them when they went out, was alcohol. So I was like, how can we set something up where we can help people get these social, almost, rebuild that social muscle without alcohol? So I would set up things called the Sober Social, where we would go either to bars or pubs or clubs I would pre-check that they have like really good non-alcoholic serves, that there's plenty of options for people. And then we would go as a little gang because there's sort of safety in numbers. And people would give people start to realize they could go into these spaces and they could socialize, and it was possible. They didn't suddenly have to stop being part of that. I remember where the seed was sown, because I had a sponsor when I first went into AA, and she said to me, "You can never, forget ever going into a pub again or a club." And I just remember thinking, what? You know, we don't just go to those places to get drunk. We go to those places for many, many reasons. Particularly, I love going to a pub. I love chatting to random people and meeting new people and going into a club and just meeting, and love that whole thing. I was like, hold on a minute. It is possible, but as you say, for some people it really takes a while. And I know there's people have come in and they were so tentatively came in, and after about a year they were like, love it. It's kind of, yeah, like going to the gym. It's like working up your little social muscle, but just, yeah, without alcohol.
That's it, though. It's kind of a habitual thing, isn't it? If you are used to socializing with alcohol, you assume you will need alcohol to socialize. So you
Mm.
just need to build up the muscle of, I can socialize. I don't need it.
Yeah, and we're really blessed. We live in a time now where there are so many things on offer for people. There's morning glory, and there's sober supper clubs, and there's sober dating. There's so much on offer now. Just have to look, and if you can't find it, just set something up. Find a little group. That's what I did. I needed to find some people. I moved from London to Margate. And it was a really good way. I set this little group up. It's a really great way of meeting new people and getting out and about and meeting other people who are on the similar path to me.
So just create it.
Create it, and have a look, because there are so many things. It really is. I just think we live in a time now. I think when I first got sober, there were 2 or 3 non-alcoholic spirits, one of which was Seedlip, I think, which was the very first. And I think there's over 1,000 or something like that now. There's so many options out there. And if you live somewhere that's possibly not London or a major city, and your local bar, your local restaurant don't have non-alcoholic serves, just ask them to get them in, because they buy them from the same place they get their alcohol from. They come from the same places. They just need to make the effort to buy them. And I went round every bar in Margate and sort of bullied most of them, and told them that they need to sort out their alcohol-free serves. And they all have, and they've all said to me, "Goodness, we sell so much of it." Like they're astounded about how much they sell.
No longer the need to just put up with warm ginger beer.
Oh, well, who wants to drink Coca-Cola or orange juice on a night out? You know, you want a special drink. It's a, you know, you want to feel like everybody else. It's, you know, and it's about choice. It's about inclusivity. I think where people are shocked about how much they're selling is because for loads of people couldn't even express that perhaps they didn't want to drink 10 pints. Maybe they wanted 2 pints and a few non-alcoholic serves, you know, but by giving people choice and including everybody, then you've got, you know, you're giving something to everyone. A lot of people ask me about what I think about sort of alcohol-free bars, which I'm not such a fan of as a concept because I feel like it's separating people again. It's kind of, you know, it's that it's dividing. Like I have no problem with some people can drink, you know, some people enjoy free drinks. There's absolutely no judgment. Some people don't like drinking, some people can't drink, whatever. But by giving choice, you know, either low, no, and normal drinks, you bring people together and you take away the stigma. And it's like, you know what, I'm going to have a pint of Lucky Saint. The guy might have two normals and a Lucky Saint. I think it's about giving people choice and keeping everybody together.
So, do you think that we can learn something about the relationships that we have with ourselves by looking at how we move?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's what it, you know, it's all about coming back to ourselves. It's all about coming, you know, making friends with ourselves. I mean, sometimes if you know what, sometimes you think about the way you talk to yourself, like, would I ever actually talk to a friend the way I sometimes talk to myself? And that's such a massive part of the journey, you know, is loving every part of us. I think you know, we have such a funny relationship with our bodies. And I suppose it's from being so judged and being, you know, given images of what sexy is, what beautiful is for so many, you know, that we think if we don't sort of match up to those, then we suddenly become kind of like disappointed in this amazing thing that's getting us round and God knows what we put it through. But it's definitely for me a big part of it, falling in love with yourself, coming inside. It's almost we have to come back to ourselves. Otherwise, we put all this pressure on everything out there to make us happy. And that's all, we're always going to be let down. We're always going to be disappointed. But we can just come back to ourselves, you know, love ourselves and start, you know, taking care of ourselves. And movement and dance is a taking care.
That's a really lovely way to look at it, that it is just nurturing, taking care of yourself.
Yeah.
But you have got to make the mindset shift away from dancing for other people, as in, how am I being looked at, to kind of dancing for yourself.
Yeah. And they're two very different things. You know, dancing for healing it's about coming so close to yourself. There's obviously space for people who dance for entertainment purposes, but there's a different sort of dance which is about this kind of really getting to know. And that's why I always start with, you know, before I do any dancing on the beach. In fact, I was going to do something about this. I always spend 5-10 minutes in silence, or I spend 5-10 minutes being really close to myself to really check in terms of what's there and to see what I kind of need. You know, sometimes I'll check in, it'll be, oh, just some tears will come. Like, oh my goodness, if I hadn't stopped there. And so I might do something a bit slower and I might just make sure I'm start to, you know, moving to release and then go into possibly, you know, but behind tears oftentimes is some anger or some, you know what I mean? And sometimes if we can't feel it as well, my therapist told me this, she's talk about sometimes you need to fake it to make it as well, because it can feel a bit silly. So, you know, we saw so much anger here, you know, it's about, you know, think about growling at people and getting into that sort of state. And, you know, and it will start, your body will start responding that way. But it's almost need to give it a bit of permission. Sometimes it needs a little bit of a nudge. But yeah, I always spend 5-10 minutes just tuning in with what's there, what's going on, and then going into the dance or into some movement.
So, because it, like you said earlier, you don't have to do happy dancing, do you?
No, no. In fact, it's all you need. It's all of the spectrum. You know, sad, slow. You know, even sometimes just shaking. You know, animals. You see animals when they've kind of been, you know, a gazelle's been chased by a tiger. It sort of stops, it has a shake. Dogs shake, and then they kind of go back. They kind of go back to what they were doing. But there's some really lovely active meditations that use sort of this idea of shaking, and there's some movement, and then they go, and then into the silence, almost like sort of shaking up a snow globe, just to, you know, to see kind of like if we move it around a little bit and give it a shake and then sit and see what our thoughts are saying or what's going on for us.
There's so much wisdom in this, isn't there?
Really is, really is.
And it's so sad that we just sit all day.
I know, and it's funny that, and we have to convince people to move. Yeah, and I know that because I remember being on that retreat, and then suddenly everyone was like, and I was like, oh my God, whatever, I felt so British. I'm like, will everyone just sit down and stop, stop making a fuss? And then, eventually I kind of let myself kind of, yeah, be drawn into it, and it was like, oh God, it was so freeing, you know. And I remember one of the ladies, the first time I ever went, there was a lady in my group. She must have been like 70 or so. And she was like a tiny little bird. She was, by the end of the week, she was like dancing prodigy. She was just literally and just alive. She looks about 20 years younger. Just all through sort of, moving her body and allowing herself just to express all those years and years of stuff that have been stuffed in.
Yeah. I mean, do you think that we've confused being in control with being safe?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I suppose a lot of it comes from childhood, not having that voice, not having, not feeling safe enough. If we had a voice when something was going on, we'd be like, oh, this isn't right. Why am I being left alone? But you don't have that voice. But we carry that with us. And I think it really shapes us and it, shuts us down so much, which is, I presume, why in this country, particularly in the UK, where we have such a drinking culture because it's the thing that gives us that permission. You watch a bunch of lads go into a pub and they're all sort of shy and nervous, and a couple of hours later they're rah! It's they need that to get to what's in there. That stuff is all in there. It's just coming out a bit sideways because it's been, there's been loads of alcohol thrown into it, but it's all in there, and it needs to come out. You can
Yeah.
almost, I always think you can always tell what somebody needs by watching them when they're drunk, because it'll be giving you an insight, possibly quite a bit of a distorted insight into what's going on. Yeah. Well, you get the criers and you get for me, it was about terrible blackouts, terrible blackouts. But I think, for me, it was probably this like just not wanting to, my part of my healing was just, I was just so traumatized. It was this sort of idea. And that was what was coming out when I was drinking. I would sort of black out.
Yeah.
It was quite frightening because I'd go for hours. People like, we saw you here, there, and everywhere. And I just absolute lights out. But yeah, there was something in that for me. And it's difficult because, this society it just pushes you. It's at every angle, to celebrate, commiserate, whatever, it's just such in such a part of our culture. And if you're making that step to move away, it can feel it can feel quite a lot.
Sometimes people are not happy when you turn down a drink. They're like, oh, well, I won't then. And then you feel really guilty for
Yeah,
like
yeah,
not
no,
having one. Like it's just such a collective.
yeah. It's funny. I have people sort of say to me, "Oh, you don't mind if we have a drink, do you?" It's like absolutely not. Like, just you
Don't
do
find it
you.
offensive. Like,
Yeah. No, it's funny. And as you say, it's the only thing that when you give up, people, if someone said to you they weren't eating, they were vegetarian or they were vegan, you wouldn't stop saying, oh, go on, have a sausage. You'd sort of expect. You'd just be like, okay, you don't eat meat. Great. Then, okay. But, why is that then? And you sure, I'm sure, amount of people said to me, sure, you can't just have one. I mean, it's like, no,
yeah,
no, I can't.
weird the need to kind of fit in.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So, what is the most surprising thing that you've learned about human beings through watching them move, do you think?
Just how innately ingrained in them it really is, and how much you can just tell about a person in terms of the way they move. It's just that's been the most surprising. And just watching people, when they move out of this and get back into their body and their body starts to trust them, you just watch, just like I was saying, well, best when sometimes you ask someone just put their hand on their heart, just something as small as that. You can see their shoulders go and the body's like, oh, finally, you've seen me. Like this, it's insane, this sort of separation and, coming back to wholeness, coming back to, embracing all parts of ourselves. Just have just tiny little movements back to ourselves can just, make such massive, massive difference.
So, is there one movement that anyone could start with, like right now, listening to this?
I would always start with just shaking, just really easy because it's really simple. It's just that. And try not to just shake yourself, but almost let yourself be shaken, if that makes sense. Like you know, because once she's like, oh yeah, actually that's, you know what I mean? It's just feel into where and then just start kind of, you know, shaking can be really, and you don't have to worry about, oh, dance moves. It's just literally shaking, you know, shaking, letting the fascia loosen up a little bit. And, you know, and sometimes I do, you know, try and just touch, you know, feel your body as you're moving a little bit of shake and a bit of, you know, it's like, how much do we love a hug? We love giving hugs to people, but we can kind of hug ourselves and make ourselves feel nurtured.
Do you know, I read a study that said self-hugging is more powerful than a hug from someone else.
Fascinating.
Yeah, it
That's
also releases oxytocin as hand over the heart. You probably know this, triggers the part of the brain that lights up when someone hugs you. That's why it
yeah,
feels so good.
yeah, and you can see it. I mean, and I love it. I do it with every client. I just stop them for a minute, just say, just put your hand on your heart, and you just see the shoulders, and then the small, this sort of smile. It's yeah, it's a reminder. You know, we've got coming back to yourself, like, you know, I've got to just take care of me and love me first. I've got to start with me before I can, you know, and that's, I think, what happens. We so busy trying to take care of everybody else and get, you know, out there. I think it's called an external locus of evaluation, you know, want to bring it back to ourselves. And, you know, it just leads to a happier existence, I think.
Yeah, I agree. So the one thing I always ask people on this podcast is what is your one note on vulnerability? So what is the one thing you'd like people to take away from this conversation?
Oh, just to come back to yourself. Come back to yourself. You know, just realize what a beautiful. I always say that for me, therapy is a remembering. It's you're not broken. There's nothing wrong with you. You right now are absolutely perfect as you are. You know, you are enough and perfect right in this very moment. You were born this beautiful, curious, incredible little human, and then life came along and happened to you and slapped all these messages and all this programming on the top of you. And really, for me, therapy is about peeling all those layers back and just getting back to that original, beautiful, and remembering that beautiful being that you are right now in this very moment. Is just remembering this beautiful being you are and what, you know, yeah, you are worth loving and you're not broken.
Amazing. I kind of don't want to say anything else after that. Thank you. That's been such an interesting chat.
Oh, I've really, really loved it. Thank you so much for inviting me on.